Hi everyone, my name is Leanne and today I'm bringing you the penultimate episode in my Rainbow series. This was a series where I was just picking 5 books off my shelves that corresponded to a particular colour and just chatted about them for a little bit. It was an excuse for me to pick some books off my shelves that I don't always get the opportunity to talk about. The series is coming to a close. I would have loved to do some more rounds, maybe do like a round 2 where I go back over all of the colours. But, and I'm not sure if I've mentioned this in a video yet, maybe I have, I am going to be moving back to London very soon. So I'm not going to have this beautiful background for too much longer. And when I'm moving back to London, I will only be taking my TBR, so I will only be taking the unread books I have with me. I wouldn't have like the space or anything to take all of my books with me. So my read books will be staying at my mum's house. One day I might own a flat and then I would be able to take all of my books with. Anyway, enough of me nattering on. Today we are going to be taking a look at 5 pink books. And it was actually more difficult than I anticipated to pick 5 books off my shelf. Not necessarily because there was a lack of this colour on my shelves. I think it's quite a popular colour in book design. And it's also a colour that I really gravitate towards. But I think a lot of the pink books I had on my shelf I had spoken about a few times in like recent months. And the whole point of this series is that I'm talking about books that I don't often get a chance to discuss on the channel. And I'm going to kick it off with 2 books that are for younger readers, starting with Life on the Refrigerator Door by Alice Coopers. I got this in Borders. Do you remember Borders? There used to be a Borders really local to me, but it's a new look now. I read this when I was really quite young and then I reread it a couple of years ago and I found it just as emotionally impactful rereading it as a grown-up. This book is about the relationship between a mother and a daughter, and the story is told through the notes that they leave each other on the refrigerator door. And I found that such an interesting lens to explore the relationship between these 2 characters. So for example, like if they have an argument, you don't get to witness that argument. You just witness, for example, them like acknowledging it or apologizing for it in the notes that they leave for each other. And the really heartbreaking subject matter in this book is the fact that the mother is ill. And one of the notes that ends up on the refrigerator door is going to change her life forever. It's such a heartbreaking and heartwarming story at the same time. Even though it is intended for a younger audience, I think this is one that so many grown-up readers would get so much out of. And because of the way it's told as well, it's a really, really quick read. It's a book that has just really stayed with me over the years. Next I have You Must Be Layla by Yasmin Abdel-Majid. So this is a middle grade book about our main character, Layla. Layla is Sudanese born and she is living in Australia, and she is going to a new school that she gets into on a scholarship. So it's really quite different to the school that she went to previously, and she's the first kid to go to this school who has ever worn a headscarf. The book has a lot to do with the prejudice that she faces in this school, how she overcomes it. Layla is a character who will definitely like properly stand up for herself, and I loved that about her. And another thing that I really loved about her character was her interest in science. So she enters into this school robotics competition, and normally people enter into this competition as a group, but she's like, nah, I can do it on my own. Partially because she's just slightly unstoppable, but also partially because she's just not organized in getting a team together. There were a couple of things that I thought could have been refined about this book, but overall I thought it was a really great middle grade read, and it's from an author that I would be really excited to read more stuff from. Next I have Mistakes in the Background by Laura Dockrell. Laura Dockrell is probably most well known for her young adult books, so she wrote Lorelei, that book that is about mermaids, and also the novel Big Bones. It's hard to kind of define what this book is. It is a poetry collection, but it's also very highly illustrated. So there's just like random doodles in here, there's little like comic strips, there's little like just amusing little illustrations, there's things that are just kind of like musings as opposed to poetry, and it's all laid out like it's a scanned page. So it's laid out like this, so it isn't like typed out or anything, like it's handwriting and like hand drawings. It's a really unusual book, and I think if you have enjoyed Laura Dockrell's writing in the past, maybe you've read a couple of her novels, then I would be really intrigued to see what you think of this book. I haven't ever heard anyone else talking about this book. I got this book secondhand, and it has this sticker on the front of it that says free wrapping paper and sticker set inside, and I thought, you know, I'm obviously not going to get those with it being secondhand, like the previous owner of it would have obviously taken those out, but no, they're still in there, but I've never used them for anything. But I think the fact that it comes with stickers and wrapping paper is just testament to what an odd book this is, but one that I really enjoyed nonetheless. Now obviously I have said the point of this series was for me to talk about some books that I don't often get a chance to talk about. However, could I miss an opportunity to talk about Bridget Jones' Diary by Helen Fielding? No, I could not miss this chance. This Picador Classics edition of Bridget Jones is possibly one of my favourite book covers of all time. I think it's just such a simple but ingenious illustration on the front. I probably don't need to tell you guys too much about what Bridget Jones' Diary is. You know, it's about Bridget Jones, who is navigating her 30s and navigating her complicated friendships and messy romantic relationships, navigating her career. It's just such an iconic book. And while I do recognize that there are like some issues with it, like the weight thing, I don't love the fact that Bridget is like counting her calories and counting her weight and including it in the book. I think inclusions like that can often be quite triggering for people who have a history of eating disorders. I just think it's so indisputable what a modern classic this book is. And it is such a cliche of nowadays books being compared to Bridget Jones. You know, it's the next Bridget Jones, it's the millennial Bridget Jones, it's the black Bridget Jones, it's the Muslim Bridget Jones, it's the Irish Bridget Jones. And while I do think that is very cliched and slightly annoying at times, I do think Helen Fielding's novel just lays the foundations for these other stories to be built upon. The novel is totally iconic. It is something that I will go back to over and over again. Perhaps the book not as often as I return to the films. There was definitely a phase a couple of years ago where I was regularly rewatching the Bridget Jones films, like once a month. And there is just something so comforting about this book. And if you are someone who has thought, oh, maybe this book isn't for me, I felt that way. I totally felt that way. I had so much like internalized misogyny that prevented me from picking up this book. And as soon as I did, I was like, wow, I have been missing out. And the final pink book I'm going to talk to you guys about today is definitely the most literary of this list, and that is Milkman by Anna Burns, and this won the Man Booker Prize a couple of years ago. In many ways, this is a somewhat experimental novel. It is set in an unnamed place, but we can discern from context that it is Belfast, at an unnamed time with unnamed characters. The characters are all referred to as a description of their relation to another character or like their profession. So there are characters like middle sister, maybe boyfriend, and milkman. It's a book about complicated power dynamics in relationships. It's a book about rumours and judgment and prejudice. And it's a book that is about the violence of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. It did take me a while to get into this book. It took me a while to kind of get to grips with the characters and how they interacted with one another, what exactly was going on. It took me a little while to get adjusted to the narrative voice in this book, and it's quite a stream of consciousness style. But I do think there's a point, maybe around like the 100-page mark, where if you get past that point and then if you get the voice in your head and the rhythm of the voice, it's such a remarkable and impressive novel. And because of the way the story is told with these unnamed characters, this unnamed place, it does have this strange kind of dystopian feel to it. And I think that really highlights the terrors of the reality that the author is actually speaking about. The whole book has this very like ominous undertone to it, which I think was done just so well. I remember when all of the like Booker Prize discussion was going on, there was so much talk about this book being difficult. And while I did say that it took me a little while to get into it, once I did, I was so there. I didn't find it difficult reading at all. So I found it very strange how many people were saying this book was just very, very difficult to read, because I really didn't think it was. I think if this is a book that you feel intimidated by because of all those chats around people calling it difficult, then I would encourage you to kind of overrides that. You know, there's nothing in this book that you will find super inaccessible and difficult. I did read it slightly slower than I would a lot of other books, but that's not a bad thing. I think this book is very accomplished. So there we have it, 5 pink books from my shelves, although Bridget Jones does look white from the spine. All of the books I've mentioned will be linked down below in the description if you want to find out more about them. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? Do you have a favourite pink book on your shelf? If you don't have anything in particular to say, leave me your favourite pink emoji. I will leave the playlist of other videos in this series linked in the description and in the cards if you want to check out the rest of the series. As I said, this is the penultimate episode in the series. In the next episode, we are going to be looking at black and white books. But that is it from me for now. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will speak to you in my next video.